Welcome back to another episode of the Get Back Coach, presented by Apollo Media. Week 0 in the books. A little drama across the pond, and that's where we're going to kick things off. Georgia Tech defeats Florida State. Jay, initial thoughts?
First of all, I'm going to pat myself on the back here because I think I was the one in the ACC preview that said I thought Georgia Tech was going to get to like 8 wins. Mm-hmm. And after beating Florida State, I'd say they're well on track.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. No, that was one win that if they were going to get to that 8 mark, that's definitely going to help them out. I think I had 7 or 6, but I did not really see this coming. I thought Florida State was going to Jimmy and Joe them, and by the first drive, because I had Georgia Tech covering, and I thought, oh my, like this is not good. The Georgia Tech answers, and then a bit of a rock fight the rest of the way. Jay, do you think that was Florida State maybe getting out of a game plan, or do you think Georgia Tech and that honestly great linebacking core just adjusting?
Yeah, I think first of all, Georgia Tech has a great defense. I think they adjusted well. I look at it, and the other piece of it is that Georgia Tech ran the ball exceedingly well. They had some really cool run concepts, a lot of pin pull stuff that I think gave Florida State problems. Obviously it's not going back to the triple option, but it was a physical Georgia Tech team out there, and it kind of reminds you a little bit of those Paul Johnson teams, just from a physicality perspective. And I just think, part of it is the struggles of playing overseas. There's probably some distractions, but that's not the way they wanted the revenge tour to start down in Tallahassee, was it?
No, not at all. And you mentioned possible distractions. There have been some reports saying that a couple of the Florida State players, it felt like in the beginning of the week, it felt a little bit of arrogance and a little bit of, we're going to go take care of business and then we're on to the next one. And it's kind of like, oh, hey, you still have a team to play here.
Yeah. And a conference game at that.
Yeah, a conference game. And, one of the young freshman receivers was like watching them come off the bus. And the thing is, I don't think we really think about those things if they win, if we're going to be fair. Like if they win, no one's going to talk about that. But the fact that you lose and it seems like maybe you were underestimating possibly an opponent, and I said this the other day, and I feel like teams that are overconfident, it's never them like in the beginning of the game. It's what happens when they get punched back.
Yeah. And
it looked like Florida State goes right down the field, scores swinging gate, great play call to get a cheap point in there. And then Georgia Tech answers right back, and it was almost like Florida State was stunned. And from what I saw from that first drive, Florida State taking advantage of the speed to the outside, hitting the flats, really creating. And then it seemed like they started getting behind in downs, like 2nd and long, 2nd and 8. And now they're stretching the field a little more intermediate throws. And I feel like Florida State kind of got off their game a little too quick. But again, you have to credit Georgia Tech for, really adjusting. And like you said, Jay, playing a physical brand of football. Are you kidding? Run the ball. I love that at the end of the game.
Incredible.
Absolutely
quote.
Love it. It was, but no, really physical, like a really physical football game. And Jay, don't forget, Florida State had to also hit 2 big time field goals to keep it there.
Yeah. I do want to shout out Fitzgerald because he has a hell of a leg on him. I think 50 and 59.
Mm-hmm. In the rain. Oh, yeah. Like at least a drizzle, like on grass. So
yeah. But yeah, I mean, I think we talked about this Georgia Tech team and how much production they brought back, right? Like how many starters that were coming back into the fold. And we talked about them being a team that could surprise some people. I don't think, we necessarily thought they would win this game outright, but I think we were both on Georgia Tech to cover because of the talent that they were bringing back into the fold. And it was just a well executed game plan. I think, again, are you kidding me? Run the ball, right? Like,
I know, I love it.
It's great stuff, and I'm excited to see what this Georgia Tech team does throughout the year. This feels like a team that, because of that returning talent and how much experience they have, that they're not going to just kind of rest on their laurels here. Like it feels like they're going to take advantage of this win, and there's somebody to watch in the ACC now because we can talk all day about Florida State may not have taking this game as seriously as they should, but I don't want to take that away from Georgia Tech either.
Yes,
because they came out, played excellent football, and they look like a team that can definitely contend in that conference. And I think it's something that's going to be interesting to monitor for the rest of the season. And on the flip side of that, it'll be interesting to see how Florida State responds.
Yeah. We don't have this game later on in our preview for week one. However, Georgia State at Georgia Tech, possible letdown.
Well, we'll see. I mean, this one kind of has shades of like FIU Miami, right? Like it's two teams from the same city. Probably going to get a little bit sloppy. Probably a lot of guys that know each other, just by nature of where the two schools are located. Going back to the level of experience with Georgia Tech, I don't think it's going to be a letdown game. Maybe Georgia State hangs around for a little bit longer than they should, but I feel pretty good in Georgia Tech taking care of business out there against Georgia State Panthers.
Yeah. Plus, a physicality alone. If you're going to run the football well, and play good defense, usually that carries from week to week.
Yeah.
And I do hope Georgia Tech, another win at home. That place is going to be on fire too. And I think that's the other thing that I think is definitely going to help Georgia Tech to make sure it's not a letdown is it's at home, and that place is going to be sold out. Because they're playing an in-state opponent as well. They're playing Georgia State.
An in-city opponent.
In-city opponent. And I think Georgia Tech is that place is Bobby Dodd. Yeah, Bobby Dodd, right?
Dodd, yeah. I think it's Dodd. Like maybe the oldest continuously played in stadium in college football.
Because they put the new bleachers on top of the old bleachers.
Yeah.
Yeah. But Ramble and Wreck from Georgia Tech. So Jay, what happens to Florida State now?
Who knows, right? I think there's still a lot of talent there. Listen, we know, honestly, like a lot of people were talking about DJU and him not having a great. I don't think DJU had that bad of a game, in my opinion. I don't think he's as good at the quarterback position as Jordan Travis.
No.
So you're always going to have a little bit of a drop off there, but you'd expect, the pieces around them, guys like Roydell Williams at running back. Like there's a lot of weapons on that team that you would expect to kind of elevate him. I think they're going to bounce back, but this is the kind of loss that can kill you early in the season and things just start snowballing. So we'll see how they bounce back. Going to be a story to monitor for the rest of the year.
By the way, Jay, just in 2024, DJU 19 to 27, 70% completion percentage for 193 yards. Not awful.
No, and I think there were some drops too.
And there was two really big drops, and also I think they were trying to use him throwing like fades down the field, like. Again, only 8 incompletions, but I think some of those incompletions, it was like, I have to force it. I have to do this. So yeah, I don't think it's really on DJU that much. I wouldn't hang it on him.
No, and that's part of it is just because the nature of the quarterback position, right? Like you're gonna get probably a larger share of the blame than maybe you should. But I again, it's just going to be something that we have to see. You don't want to have too many overreactions this early in the season, but obviously Florida State has to find a way to rebound from this.
Yep, absolutely. Next, we move to a really great matchup. Maybe the surprise matchup of the weekend. Montana State at New Mexico. New Mexico ends up dropping this one at the end. They were pretty much winning this whole game. They were winning by 17.
17 in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, 17 in the fourth. Montana State comes back. Both rushing offenses had really good days. Montana State's even better. Jay, Montana State, 567 total yards on New Mexico. Also, here's a hot number for you. Lobos, 1 for 8 on third down. It is the money down. It will kill you. But the Bobcats of Montana State beat an FBS opponent. Jay, you are the Mountain Best correspondent. Thoughts?
Also the Big Sky correspondent, I feel like.
Yes. It's like a civil war for you.
It's my part of the country,
yes.
I guess you could say. So I think we can't forget that going into this game, Montana State was favored by double digits.
Yes.
And honestly, from what I saw from New Mexico, even though, like you said, the issues on third down, the fact they let that comeback happen, I think they looked much improved.
Yes.
I think Montana State is just a more complete football team at this stage. Obviously, very impressive rushing attack, a pair of good running backs for Montana State. You had the 93-yard run. That was just awesome, right? Because the broadcast was talking about Montana State needing to find a way to get some explosive plays to get back in the game in a hurry, and all of a sudden they break that run off. It's New Mexico fans are going to be probably pretty downtrodden about this, but there's a lot of good to take from it. I think Devin Dampier is going to be fun to watch moving forward. That little, I don't know what you call that play. It's basically a naked, but it was kind of like a hidden ball trick where he, turns his back to the defense and boots out for the touchdown. That was an awesome play. Again, I talked about this. Great to see Bronco Mendenhall back at New Mexico.
It is.
I think New Mexico is going to surprise some Mountain West teams later in the season. Just kind of a tough matchup to start the year. And again, I think they outperformed expectations, at least per Vegas.
Technically covered, yeah.
So I mean, you look at it, and there's some good takeaways for the Lobos. You can't dwell on the 17-point comeback happening against you, right? Like it's if you sit and think on it too much, things can get ugly in a hurry. And then for Montana State, it's a win over an FBS program, always great as an FCS program. I don't know if you saw the graphic that the Big Sky posted. I think they've won at least one in the past 10 years or something against the Mountain West. So it's kind of a running theme there. But again, I mean, the Bobcats are one of the better FCS programs. They'll be a playoff contender. Looking forward to getting to see them against Idaho later this year for the Sinjay away game. I just look at this and I'm thinking there's a lot of positives for both teams, a lot of things to work on for both teams. And we'll see, I think New Mexico is going to be a team that gets better as the season goes on, the more time Bronco Mendenhall has to work with his guys. Yeah.
Is that game you're going to? Is that in
Bozeman. Yeah.
Ooh, I almost insulted a whole bunch of people. I was going to say Bozeman or the Kibbe Dome, but yeah. So no, that's a cool little stadium too.
Yeah, Bobcat
like a nice
Stadium, Bozeman. Yeah, it's going to be nice. They had the Brawl of the Wild, I think, a couple of years ago, where College Game Day was at Bozeman for that one, and it's a really cool environment. I have a really cool road trip planned for that, so I'm excited to get to talk about that later in the season. But looking at this, it's It's a fun FCS FBS matchup that I think over delivered on people's expectations. I think that was a really fun game, and you can't really get much better than the Georgia Tech Florida State game and Montana State New Mexico game to kick off this year.
Oh yeah, I'll leave you guys with this. If you didn't catch this game, at least watch the final drive or watch the highlights. Great plays. It was great football, Jay. It was a great football game. And we're going to go from a great football game to one that I think was a little more sloppy.
But still fun.
Still fun. SMU at Nevada. SMU, big favorites, and they almost got a scare in Reno. 29-24 at SMU wins at the end. I think the big turnaround here, Jay, muffed kick leading to the safety. SMU and gets to 2 and then gets a big touchdown stretching the field like they do. But here's the thing, Jay. Are you more nervous about SMU, or has Nevada taken a bigger step forward than we anticipated?
I think it's a little bit of both. So starting with Nevada, we just talked about Montana State. Jeff Choate was a Montana State coach before he came to the FBS ranks. Did some great things there, led them to a FCS semifinal, I believe. So I think he's a great coach. He was under Sark last year at Texas. I think they have improved. I think SMU also may not be as good as some people expected, which, to be fair, I don't think either of us were as high on SMU as some of the rest of the country was, talking about them going into the ACC and competing right away. One of the big things I brought up was that I think they're going to struggle in the trenches. I think that's going to be where they have a lot of issues, and I think at times you saw that. The really surprising thing was the quarterback play wasn't as good as you expected, right? Preston Stone struggles early on. Obviously, they turned it on in the second half and were able to get the win. But I think SMU has to be a little bit concerned about what they saw there. And there were some challenges too. You know me, I always talk about elevation. Playing up in Reno, I think 4,000 feet above sea level, coming from Dallas, obviously not an easy task. Also cold early in the year, right? Like I think it was in the 40s during that game. Not really something that you expect to experience in August, right? So there's some mitigating factors there, but I think you still have to worry if you're an SMU supporter.
No, I think you definitely are, because again, going to a bigger conference, I think they were kind of in a bit of a rebuild anyway, like a little bit of turnover with SMU. But yeah, that not a great start, but like a win is a win is a win. Never apologize for losing. Go Mustangs, go get them next week.
And also, just before we kind of move on from this, McKay Stadium, underrated venue.
Yeah, like nice little backdrop, a little bit of like mist and snow in the air.
The mountains were covered in snow, which again, weird to see in August, but I'm not mad at it.
Jay, I think next summer, maybe like underrated stadium list.
Ooh, I'm so down for that.
That might be something definitely ones. Maybe we'll have to figure out a criteria. I like that. That'll be good to fill an afternoon in the summer.
Absolutely.
Underrated stadiums. But yeah, definitely a little underrated. So now we go on to week 1. Gonna give a little bit of a preview, some picks. Also maybe telling you to stay away from some games. But Thursday night, North Carolina at Minnesota. Jay, this game, big swing in the spread. Okay. Minnesota before the weekend was favored by 2. Or I think it was Thursday. After the weekend or during the weekend, and now it is sitting, Minnesota is now a 2-point dog. So that's a 4-point swing. Over under set at 50.5. Here's the thing, Jay. I saw something. Maybe it's my degenerate gambling brain. That has been wrong from time to time. But I saw a graphic on ESPN as I was watching College Game Day. Fan vote. And it sits as it was like I think Minnesota was favored by 1, or it was like a pick 'em or something. And it said fan vote. 85% of people are picking North Carolina. It's like, wow, that's a lot of people. But yet, home game and the line now moved all the way in the other direction of North Carolina. I would feel like a fan vote that big would constitute a larger spread. I feel like everyone's putting money on North Carolina, and I usually think when this happens, Vegas usually wins. So that caught my attention. Again, just my degenerate gambling brain. Also, home game for the Gophers. North Carolina loses a lot on offense. A lot. Remember, they had Drake May last year. They have to replace Drake May. Gophers, on the other hand, have a lot of returning production. Are those guys great? Don't really know. But home environment, returning production, and it seems like Vegas is, if you win, Vegas wins lots of money. Jay, I think I'm going Gophers for all those reasons.
Yeah, and the one thing I'm really hammering here is the under, just because I think, like you said, North Carolina's having to replace Drake May. Max Johnson, solid quarterback, obviously was at A&M. He's not Drake May. And I think Drake May carried this North Carolina team to a lot of their wins last year. They're not going to get that same boost from the quarterback position in 2024. I think it's going to be a low-scoring game, kind of a rock fight. I think it's good for North Carolina that this is early in the season, right? Like, definitely better that they're not going up to Minnesota in the winter or late in the fall. But I don't really feel confident in either team, so I'm just taking the under because I think it's going to be a low-scoring affair.
Yeah, I like that. I think the safe bet is under. If you really want some extra action, play that under. And then pair it with Minnesota +2 if you really want to get after it. But yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. Next one. I think this is probably like, listen, you have North Carolina, Minnesota. I think this is one people are really going to tune into. North Dakota State, a dynasty in the FCS Blue Blood, taking on Colorado and the Fighting Deons. Colorado is favored by 9.5 at home, over under set at 59.5. Jay, I think this is pretty simple. This is Colorado's skill positions versus North Dakota State in the trenches. And I think my big question for you, Jay, can North Dakota State line up against an FBS opponent, even if that FBS opponent is someone like Colorado who isn't known for the trenches? And do they have the depth to compete?
So here's the thing. This is one of those styles make fights games. Like you said, the trenches of North Dakota State, the skill positions of Colorado. The thing is, I think the trenches for Colorado are just so bad that North Dakota State is going to have a lot of success running the ball against Colorado in Boulder. I love North Dakota State +9.5 here. I just think that they're going to stick around. I don't know if they win outright, but I think because Colorado they struggle so much in the trenches that it's going to just give them problems all game, right? It's going to be a struggle. Mm-hmm. I think Shedeur Sanders, Travis Hunter, and company are going to make plays, but I don't see any way that Colorado slows down the offense of North Dakota State. I think North Dakota State's going to run the ball really well. Obviously could be wrong, but it just doesn't tend to go well for teams when they play North Dakota State in non-conference. And I don't think this is going to be any different. The worry is that like Colorado scores so quickly with some of their skill positions that North Dakota State just kind of can't keep up. But I mean, again, I think you're going to get to the passer if you're North Dakota State. I think you're going to pressure Shedeur Sanders, and I think that's going to create some issues for the Buffs. Here's the other piece of it. I still am scratching my head, and I'm puzzled by the decision last year of Colorado to move on from Sean Lewis at offensive coordinator. I still don't understand that. And I think the offense suffered because of it. And I still don't think the play calling is going to be great offensively. So you have to wonder if that may play a factor as well.
Yeah. And if I was a little unsure before, but I think you just convinced me, to go NDSU plus 9.5, maybe over 2.
My thought there is I'm just a little bit worried about some of North Dakota State's drives, just like taking up like 10 minutes, right? Like just because of
shortening the game almost.
Yeah, I worry about that a little bit. So that's why I'm not taking the over here. But I like North Dakota State to cover.
Okay. Friday night, TCU at Stanford, Big 12 versus ACC. Stanford, a 9-point underdog at home, over under set at 59.5. Jay, I'm not betting this game. I do think this is a game to watch. It's on at 10:30 at night, by the way.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna watch it. I'm gonna hang out. I'm just gonna enjoy myself and watch this game. I don't know enough about either of these teams to lay a conscious bet. I know Stanford has A.O. Manor. I know TCU should be more talented than them. But I don't know nearly enough about these two teams going into the year. And for that, I'm staying away. And let's just enjoy some great, nope, not Pac-12, I don't know. What is this?
It's an ACC Big 12 matchup, Bubba.
Yeah, ACC Big 12 matchup after dark. So, but yeah, that's what I'm going with. I'm staying away from this for betting purposes. Just going to sit back and relax.
Yeah, I'm also staying away from this from betting purposes. Obviously, supporting TCU quarterback Josh Hoover, a Rockwall Heath graduate like myself. I think, like you said, TCU has more overall talent. I think Stanford's going to be pretty dang well coached, though. And this game being in Stanford, like, that can cause some issues for TCU as well. You have to wonder how they're going to handle, like you said, playing this late at night. Not something that a central time zone team usually experiences. So it'll be interesting to see how this one plays out. I would stay away from this from the betting purposes, like you said. I lean TCU, but not enough confidence to feel strongly one way or the other.
Mm-hmm. Nope, definitely. Now the main course, Saturday. And we're going to start Clemson versus Georgia. Georgia, 13.5 point favorite, over under set at 48.5. I don't know about either of these lines. 13.5 is a lot, Jay. And like, I'm not necessarily, Georgia's more talented. I think they're better in pretty much every possible area, but 13.5 is a lot. Here's the thing. Throw the betting out of this. I'm going to tell you how this game is going to go. This game is going to be close early on because of Clemson's defense. Clemson's defense always reloads on defense. This game is going to be decently close. Georgia is going to wear them down, and by the end of the game, Georgia will have an opportunity to score, to put them up by double digits. Is that going to put them up to 14? Is it going to put them up to 23? I don't know. But this game is close. Georgia starts pulling away in the second. By the fourth quarter, this one's over. I just think Georgia's just too darn good.
Yeah, I think Clemson's going to hang around in this one. I think Clemson ultimately covers. But I do think Georgia kind of pulls away in the fourth, like you said. I just think it's going to be like 12 points. I think it's going to be like a 12-point win. And Georgia kind of, coasts at the end to victory. Clemson, when we talked to Mike in the ACC preview, he mentioned that Clemson is pretty confident in the receivers that they have this year, something that's been kind of lacking recently there. Obviously, a very good running back as well at Clemson. I think Clemson's going to be better than people think. And maybe that's just me buying into the stuff that we heard from Micah when he talked about the ACC. But I like Clemson to keep this game close and cover.
Yeah, and I think we did talk about it. I think I put Clemson at 9-3 with a shot to win the ACC. You are right. I think their offense is definitely going to be better. But I think last year their offense was pretty pedestrian. So I think it's not saying much to say that, hey, it's a little bit better. But I would have loved to see this matchup 3 years ago.
Yeah, no kidding, huh?
3 or 4 years ago, yeah. Still going to be a great matchup. And now, the game that I cannot wait for, my personal little civil war going on. I mean, really not. I mean, come on. You know who I'm rooting for.
Yeah.
Penn State takes on West Virginia in Morgantown. Penn State is a 8-point favorite, over under set at 51. A little bit of rain. They're calling for a little bit of rain in Morgantown. Here's the thing, Jay. I'm going to kick this one off. So I think if Penn State's offense gives Drew Aller time, which I believe they do, because West Virginia's weakness, at least last year, was their defensive line and getting pressure on the quarterback. And if Penn State's able to do that, if Penn State's able to protect Drew Aller, and this offense, if Colton Nickey can scheme like we think he can, dare I say, and God, I hope I don't eat these words, I see a possible rehash of the Auburn game in 2022, where Penn State just goes on an absolute tear in the late second, early third quarter. I think that can happen. But I also see the Purdue game in that same year where it comes down to the final drive. Here's the thing. Penn State protecting Drew Aller. Can Drew Aller make can he make plays downfield? We've seen that he doesn't turn the ball over. He's just got to trust his reads and hit him. Tom Allen and Penn State's defense, I'm actually pretty confident in Penn State's defense. West Virginia loves to run the football. Penn State returns their middle defensive linemen, which were pretty darn good last year, and they have 2 defensive ends that could very well be first-team All-Big Ten players. 4-2-5, linebackers should be fine. Secondary, lose 2 great corners, but you get some corners also. I mean, the more I look at it, the more I think Penn State, it's going to be like last year. Penn State, this game's close in the beginning, and Penn State pulls away at the end, similar to last year. That's what I think is going to happen. And before I kick it to you, Jay, I do have something to express because I keep seeing it. And as you all know, the people listening, and Jay knows this too, I have a giant soft spot for West Virginia, lived there for 4 years, and saw a lot of guys that I coached and a lot of guys that the program that I came from went to West Virginia. So I've always had a soft spot for this program. There is going to be a hostile environment in Morgantown, without question. If you're a Penn State fan and think that it's not going to be hostile or Penn State shouldn't be worried about the crowd, you're fooling yourself. But all of this revenge talk keeps coming up. Okay. And I know, I get it. It was a little cheap. It was a little cheap that Penn State put that last touchdown up on West Virginia. It was a little cheap. They did have to run one more play. Okay. They could have just taken the knee and ran out of there. However, I want to remind West Virginia people what happened before that. You ran the ring around the rosy 2-point conversion to go down 16. Onside kick, Penn State then runs the ball 6 times, and Neil Brown calls a timeout. Penn State then, because again, 4th and 3, you don't really kick the field goal there because that's kind of running it up yourself. So you go for it. And to avoid a disastrous block kick. You go for it, you run a little slant. West Virginia guy, personal foul. Now you got to run one more. Penn State runs quarterback ISO. And Bo Prabula carries 2 West Virginia defenders 4 yards downfield. I don't know. I keep seeing this revenge stuff. I don't think it's that big of a deal. I don't know. I would have rather him take the knee, though, I will say. Now, Jay, to you.
Man, I love this rushing attack for West Virginia. Donaldson, White, Garrett Green as well. Like, they can all run the ball. You have some talent at the quarterback position. Like you mentioned, the secondary is going to struggle, but I don't know if Drew Allar is going to take advantage of it. Mm-hmm. I think they're going to keep him upright. I just don't know that they're going to take advantage of it. I like West Virginia to cover, especially with that hostile crowd in Morgantown. You look at this game and it's early, so maybe the crowd won't be as into it. The crowd's going to be into it. They have been circling this game for a while. It is going to be loud in Morgantown. I like West Virginia to cover 8.5. I think Penn State wins by a touchdown. I think it's going to be kind of a nail biter at the end. Penn State's going to look like the better team for most of the game, but West Virginia keeps this one close.
I think West Virginia fans, dare I say, have been looking forward to this game more than the Pitt game this year. Because that travel to the Pitt game, it's not far. A lot of West Virginia people get there, but I think West Virginia fans, after that 9-win year, are like, let's see if let's see if we can compete with one of the top 15 programs in the last decade. Let's see if we got it in us. Oh man, I think Penn State covers. It's my gut. Yeah. I've been looking at this. I've been looking at this game, and this just reminds me of Auburn all over again. It really does. And the more I look at it, and I think the more Penn State matches up well against West Virginia. Because here's the other thing, Jay. Last year, Penn State threw the ball pretty well against West Virginia. And I know West Virginia fans will say, well, we didn't figure it out then. Neither did Penn State. McClain was starting as a receiver, and he barely played after the 4th game. So I think Penn State in that receiver room kind of found themselves during the year, but there's all that those guys are coming back with a chip on their shoulder, especially with KLS leaving. I think they have a lot to prove. But the more I look at this team, and the more I look at West Virginia, I think Penn State covers. I don't know. Again, West Virginia last year. I love the Mountaineers. They had 9 wins. They only beat 1 bowl team. But I don't know. It's going to be fun. I wish I was there. Just ticket prices are just so astronomical. And I don't know. Who knows? Maybe I'll find something and then just drive 3 hours and park on the highway.
There you go.
Might do it. We have another FCS versus Big 12 program. South Dakota State at Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State favored by 10 at home. Over under set at 54. Jay, this is another FCS juggernaut, man, going up against a Big 12 program with some hopes this year. What's your take on it? Does South Dakota State have a chance?
Yeah, I've been out on Oklahoma State this year, and I realize that's not necessarily the good general consensus. I just don't think the Cowboys are going to be great in 2024. And I think South Dakota State is a dynasty. They've kind of stepped into that North Dakota State role, and they absolutely have a chance in this one. I expect them to cover that plus 10. I think they're going to give Oklahoma State a lot of problems. You got to remember that this is a South Dakota State team, I think 2 years ago against Iowa, that it was like
almost one.
Yeah. So a very good Jackrabbit squad, and 10 points is a lot in my mind here. I think South Dakota State, I don't know if they win outright, but I think they keep it within a touchdown. I like the Jackrabbits cover. Very similar program stylistically to North Dakota State, where they're going to be physical. They're going to run the ball really well. And Oklahoma State has some distractions, right? Like the whole Ollie Gordon DUI situation. This is not a program that's had a clean offseason. You would like to have one, especially playing against the reigning defending FCS national champions in the Jackrabbits. I really like South Dakota State's cover here.
So you talked about the distractions. I have something else too. Oklahoma State, notorious for not starting the year off well.
South Alabama last year.
South Alabama didn't just lose, Jay. Got killed.
Yeah.
They lost that game to Central Michigan a couple years ago. They are a team that I feel like usually starts off sluggish. And I think that's the tipping point for me. And I think that's going to make me take South Dakota State plus the 10. I feel confident in that. South Dakota State, great football team, going to control the line, or going to try and control the line of scrimmage. Good offense. Distractions for Oklahoma State. I think there's going to be a little bit of a scare in Stillwater.
They are not going to be resting easy. It is, man. I think, like, I genuinely do think that South Dakota State has a chance to win this game. I just don't know that they get it done. It is going to be a rough game for the Cowpokes. This is just, it is what it is, right? Like you shouldn't schedule a South Dakota State or a North Dakota State unless you're like Alabama. Even then, like, I still wouldn't want to see them on my schedule because they play such a physical brand of football. They're going to, even if you get out of this game in one piece, like, you're going to feel it the next day. You're going to feel it at treatment in the morning. It's just going to be tough. It's going to be tough. And South Dakota State does a good job of stopping the run as well, which, when your best player is your running back, you're like, if all of a sudden they can't get the ground game going with Ollie Gordon, they could be in some real trouble. So, yeah, I mean, I've already said it, South Dakota State, I like them to cover.
Yep. Next up, Miami at Florida. I was a little shocked by this line, Jay. Everybody is counting out the Florida Gators. Everyone is saying Florida Gators going to be one of the worst teams in the SEC. They're not going bowling. Their schedule is too tough. It is too hard. Only a 2.5 point underdog, over under at 54. Miami should be better up front. Miami should be the better team. It is in the swamp, so I guess you have to factor that in. And they're probably adding that 3.5 bonus to Florida for being at home. But Jay, I don't know. This line scares me because I would think Miami should win this game, maybe by a score, or maybe by 10, 12, something like that. I don't know. Miami should be better pretty much everywhere, right? They got a lot of guys coming back. I don't know. What's your take?
Miami should be better everywhere, but Florida's kind of one of those teams that even when they're not good, they always have dudes. Mm-hmm. And again, playing at home, you had the game against Utah a couple years back where, obviously Florida didn't have a great year, but they're still able to pull off that upset. I think they'll be better early in the year. Right. Like, I think Florida's going to be one of those teams that kind of fades as the year goes on. So I think that's part of it too. You look at it like they still kind of have hope, right? Like, it's still early in the season. I think things will snowball for Florida. When we touched on the SEC preview, obviously Florida has an incredibly difficult schedule. But again, Miami should just be better everywhere. I'm staying away from this game betting though. I don't trust it. Like, this is just going to be one of those games, rivalry game. Again, a lot of guys that know each other from high school football in the Sunshine State. So it's going to be an interesting one. Like, this is a game that I'm very excited to watch, but I just don't have a good feel for how it's going to play out. And, again, with the ACC preview, I touched on it. Miami's another team like Oklahoma State where a lot of people are in on Miami. I'm not. I just don't think Miami is going to be that great this year, which makes me think that Florida has a real shot here, but no real confidence in either team.
Yeah. See, that's the thing. I'm in on Miami, and that maybe I'm overestimating them, but I'm in on Miami, and I will say this: if Billy Napier wins, that cools his job down for a little bit. That cools the seat for a bit. But I don't know. Going to be interesting though. Going to be a fun one. Now, Jay, next game, Notre Dame at Texas A&M. A&M, is that correct? Is A&M favored?
A&M is favored.
A&M favored by 3 over under at 46.5. Jay, your Texas A&M Fighting Ags, are they going to do this?
Man, I've gone back and forth. I've waffled on this game all off season. Here's the thing. Notre Dame lost their starting left tackle. I think a torn biceps was the injury. On the offensive line, they are starting, I think what I saw, 2 true freshmen and 3 sophomores. That's a lot of youth up front against what should be a very dangerous Texas A&M defensive line. You lose Walter Nolan, you lose McKinley Jackson, but I think this defensive line could arguably be better. Obviously, you bring in Big Ten Defensive Player of the Year, Nick Scorton, great pass rusher. Shamar Stewart is a monster at the other end spot. You have your starting linebacker in Torian York back. You picked up some linebacker transfers in the portal in Solomon DeShields, who was an All-ACC player, I believe, for Pitt, as well as Scooby Williams from Florida. You have a lot in the secondary. And you would think that with the matchup between a very good Texas A&M defensive line and a very inexperienced offensive line from Notre Dame, that A&M is going to kind of feast. Obviously, you bring in Riley Leonard at quarterback, but I mean, it's going to be tough to keep him upright, in my opinion. The flip side, A&M offensively still has a lot of questions. Connor Wegman, super talented. Can he stay healthy? Right? Like the offensive line has been the problem for A&M, and Notre Dame has a very good defensive line too. So it's kind of they're almost mirrors of each other's in a lot of ways. I feel like these are very, very similar questions. I'm expecting a low scoring game. Ultimately, I think A&M gets it done just because I think they're a little bit better defensively. And I think, there's some familiarity there with Mike Elko and Riley Leonard, right? There's some tendencies. There's some things that Elko's going to know about Riley Leonard. And sure, Riley Leonard's going to have some familiarity with the Texas A&M defensive scheme as well. But I think what A&M has on defense is better than anything that Duke had defensively. So I like A&M to win this one. It's going to be tough. I don't expect the A&M's offense to look great here, partially because I still don't trust the offensive line, and partially because I think Notre Dame has an excellent defense. But there's going to be a lot of hype in that stadium. Kyle Field's going to be rocking. I think the home field advantage is what carries the day here. The other piece of it that I'm looking at, like College Game Day's there. But the other piece I'm looking at is I think A&M's a little bit underrated at the tight end position. I think they picked up some really good pieces, and with Colin Klein having a little bit better of an approach for masking some of the deficiencies of an offensive line. Like Kansas State plays physical brand of football, but they're not getting like 5-star recruits on the offensive line. Let's be realistic there. I think A&M's going to find just enough success offensively to win this game.
I love it, man. If you weren't going to say it, I was. I also like A&M here. However, betting wise, if I were to tell someone to bet on this game, I would tell them to bet the under. I would tell them to bet 46.5 under. Listen, I like Connor Wegman, talented. He has shown he has had spots where he's looked absolutely great. Lost a couple key receivers, correct?
So Evan Stewart is the big loss at receiver.
Right. And
then you also lose Jake Johnson at tight end, who was one of the leading receivers last year.
Right. I think the defense is going to be better under Elko. I like A&M at home to beat Notre Dame. I know you got Riley Leonard coming in from Duke to fit into Notre Dame to try and help that offense out. But I think A&M gets it done. I think they get after Riley Leonard. This is a close rock fight, knife fight in a back alley, get a fight in a phone booth type game. Texas A&M fighting Ags with a big statement win to open up primetime college football season.
I'm going to be in College Station. I probably will not be in Kyle Field unless a miracle happens and I win the lottery, but I will be in College Station for this one. I'm excited, man. I mean, it's just, you know how special that place is to me. I think what it comes down to is, can Connor Wegman stay healthy, right? Like, and that will set the tone for the season. But again, the defensive line for A&M is going to carry the day.
Yeah. And Jay, like, just to kind of go off what you said, like how much that place, where that place is in your heart. Like, I have no ties to A&M. I have absolutely none. You are my only tie to Texas A&M, and maybe technically the Lackawanna connection with Jermaine Elamir.
Shout out London.
Yeah, to London. Like, that's it. But man, seeing you guys, like A&M people, the alums, walk around all with your rings on and walk the outside of Kyle Field and just kind of be in that element. It's a truly special place. It truly is. And I'm not just pandering to you either. Like, it's one of the cooler, it's one of the coolest venues in college football. One of the best atmospheres going. Definitely.
Yeah. So it should be electric on Saturday.
Yeah. It's going to be,
Notre Dame comes down.
It's going to be loud. It's going to be very, very loud. Last game on our preview, USC versus LSU. Jay, where's this one at?
It is in Las Vegas.
Oh, Las Vegas. Very nice.
Disgusting.
Yeah, terrible. So LSU a 4-point favorite, which a little surprised by that. Over under set at 64. This is a game where I think we know what LSU is. Great, pretty good offense, upperclassmen defense that kind of need to prove themselves a little bit. USC, I think we think that's a terrible phrase, but anyway, we think we know what USC is going to be. Bad in the trenches, possibly a great quarterback, good offense. I think after this game, we're going to know more about USC than we do LSU.
I don't disagree with that. I think you also question LSU at the quarterback position just because you're replacing the Heisman winner, right? Like,
right.
That's not an easy thing. No. We've seen some of Nussmeier, and he's talented. One thing I have heard out of the LSU camp this offseason is that he's been a little turnover happy. So that could be something to keep an eye on. But yeah, I think the over is a safe bet here. I think I think they're going to put a ton of points up, both of these teams. I just don't think LSU has had enough time to fix it. Obviously, a very talented defense. You have one of the best defensive players in the nation in Harold Perkins, who's an extremely talented linebacker. But yeah, I think you're going to see a lot of points in this one.
I like the over under here. Like I said, LSU's defense kind of struggled a little bit last year. Like, yeah, and Harold Perkins really good, but I feel like for some of those games, I feel like their defense was just okay, and they were struggling a lot defensively. Right. And you have a lot of these upperclassmen coming back. I think, though, that defense is going to play with a chip on their shoulder. I also think this is a key here. It's early in the season. USC is replacing a lot via portal, trying to fix their trenches, trying to fix their secondary. And I think LSU is just returning guys. They have guys locked, ready to roll. And I think LSU is going to gel quicker because they have more guys returning, more production.
More continuity.
Yeah, more content. Thank you. That's the big boy word that I couldn't find. That's that A&M education there for you. I think I like LSU -4 too. I do. I like LSU -4. It scares me a little bit. I thought that number would be a little bit higher, but I'm going to go LSU -4 and then over 64. And I think if you want a safe bet, take over 64.
Stop playing neutral site games.
Yes, stop playing neutral site games. Jay, anything else to leave with the people?
Last week was a teaser. We got a full slate of games. The season's back. It's man, I know it's going to go by too quick, and I'm already kind of dreading that. But I'm just so excited that college football is back in all its glory. Some fantastic matchups to start off the season. We're going to have some good ones next week too. But I mean, man, it is a great time of year. I have a feeling it's going to be a special season. So stay tuned in. Make sure you do all the things that help us grow as a podcast, Make sure to like, subscribe, give us 5 stars, do all the things that help us give you this college football knowledge. And so then we can feed it back into the community. It becomes a positive feedback loop. We all have fun. We all have a good time, and we create special memories together.
Oh, you're getting so good at that.
I have learned how to land the plane.
Yes, bud. You have. I love it. Make sure you give us a follow at Coach J Arnold, and then at myself at CFB Coach, CFB Jake. Listen to me. I have not gotten it figured out. And then also our main account Twitter at the GB Coach. From all of us here, thank you all for tuning in.